بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Fiqh al-Muamalat online classes. And today's topic is a continuation of the classification of the contract. And we have today the last two classes of the contract, which are the statement of the contract or the classification from the angle of the expression of the contract, meaning from the angle of the offer and acceptance. And the second one, named and unnamed contract. Let's start with the first one. This classification, again, as I mentioned, is from the angle of offer and acceptance, or we call it also a sigha, or we call it the expression of the contract. And this is divided into three types of contract. The first one, we call it uqud munajjaza. Uqud munajjaza means completed contract, meaning the way you express, the way you issue the offer and acceptance, what kind of stated its issue, and what kind of indications that impact the status of the contract. Here, the first one, as I mentioned, it is uqud munajjaza, which is a completed contract. This completed contract, it is concluded upon the issuance of the offer and acceptance immediately, and the contract become concluded. And whether it is binding or not binding, it depends on the status and nature of the contract, as we have discussed it in the first cluster. But this one, offer and acceptance, will be concluded immediately upon the issuance of the offer. Upon the issuance of the acceptance, contract is concluded. For example, I hereby sold this mobile to you with $100. I hereby accept buying the mobile with the said amount, and offer and acceptance both have been issued. Contract is concluded immediately on the spot. This one we call it a completed contract, or we call it in Arabic uqud munajjaza. The second classifications is uqud mudafa, means uqud attached to the future. First one is concluded now, offer and acceptance now, it is concluded now. The second one is attached to the future, we call it uqud mudafa. It's a contract which the offer and the acceptance indicate their formations from the time that they have issued, but attached to the future to fixed time. For example, you can, especially in the ijara, you can see, for example, a contract is concluded, but effective, for example, end of the month. So contract concluded now, but attached to the future. So it doesn't take its effect immediately. Like, for example, now I lease the house to you, lessor and lessee both issue offer and acceptance, contract is concluded, binding, take its effect now, you will take the key now, then you take the house now, then the rental start maybe today. That's the first one, completed contract or aqd munajjaz. We are talking about the second one, whereby offer and acceptance have been issued to form the contract, but attached to the future date, future time. For example, at the end of this month, the lease, the contract is concluded, yes, offer and acceptance, all the Sharia requirements have been fulfilled, but the enforcement, the effects on the subject matter will take place by the end of the month, or at the beginning of next month, or after 3 months, 6 months, whatever the two parties agree, based on their mutual consent. So this kind of contract, we call it uqud mudafa, uqud attached to the future, concluded now, but attached to the future. And this one is from the offer and acceptance, how the offer and acceptance has been issued and has been expressed to indicate whether it is completed now or it is attached to the future. The third classification, basically, it is, we call it uqud معلقة. عقود معلقة, conditional contract. These contract, their completions are built upon a conditions. If the conditions is fulfilled, the contract takes its effect. You will be my agent if you pass the examinations of the MTE, for example, the TACAFO license. You will be my broker or my capital or my mudarib in the mudaraba if you take the license, for example, of the security commissions in the investment. Whatever, you can put the conditions. You will be my agent if you reach an age of 20, 25, 26, 30, whatever, you know. You just put a condition. You'll be my agents when you finish your study, when you finish your exam, and so on and so forth. When Ramadan comes in, next Ramadan 2021 will come in, and whatever condition you can stipulate. But the bottom line, this contract is built upon a conditions. So if the conditions is fulfilled, the contract will take its effect and will be completed accordingly. So this is three types of contract which are under the SIRA. The first one is a completed contract, عقود منجزة, take their effects immediately. Second one is عقود مضافة, conditions attached, contract or contract attached to the future. So concluded now, but it takes its effect in the future. And the other one, a conditional contract or عقود معلقة, whereby the contract is built upon one conditions. If the condition is fulfilled, contract will take its effects. If the condition is not fulfilled, so basically the contract will be pending. So this is the classification from the angle of the statement. The last one is basically classification, we call it named and unnamed contract, meaning عقود مسمات وعقود غير مسمات, a contract which has a name, a contract which has no name. So the first one, العقود المسمات, basically they are named contract, like for example إجارة, إجارة, مضاربة, مشاركة, مرابحة, all these are named contract, which have been known with name, with label, either mentioned in the Quran, either mentioned in the Sunnah, and discussed by the Sharia scholars, and their rules are clear and well stipulated. And the other cluster basically is an unnamed contract, عقود غير مسمات, a contract that may emerge today, tomorrow, next year, which has no names in Sharia. So this one still could be valid if the way that the contract behave, the rules and principle of that contract, the terms and condition of that contract doesn't violate the general rules of Sharia, doesn't violate the what's so-called the general principle of Sharia, doesn't violate the maqasid of Sharia, they could be accepted. And there are some contracts, like for example, concession contract. Concession contract is something new which has not been listed in the classifications and the traditionals name of Sharia. And you will cross a few unnamed contracts which have been emerged and introduced in the market, and they are not parked under specific Sharia contract, but they are holding their own title and name, like concession contract. They have rules and they have basically what's so-called principles, and they have practices and so on and so forth. So this one, they could be acceptable, no issue with that, because the original thing in Sharia is the permissibility unless it is proven otherwise. Fiqh al-mu'amalat is based on ibaha. Everything is permissible in the mu'amalat. Everything is permissible unless it is proven otherwise. On the contrary, in the ibadat, everything is prohibited unless it is proven otherwise. So we have the ibadat section whereby you cannot innovate. Everything is prohibited unless something that has been proven by Sharia to do it. because if you want to worship God, you have to worship according to the rules that has been stipulated in the Quran and the Sunnah. You cannot behave and you cannot worship God the way you like, but you have to follow the rules. So you cannot innovate in ibadat, but you have to follow. So innovations is not allowed, and everything is prohibited unless it is proven otherwise by Sharia. But in al-muamalat, transactions, everything is permissible unless it is proven otherwise, because this is the affair of human beings. So they have the right to deal with each other in business and finance and other things in a very free way, as long as rules of Sharia and principle of Sharia and maqasid of Sharia are preserved and safeguarded. So this is basically the last two clusters, which is basically statement and sigha, and name contract. And with this, we completed the five cluster that have been mentioned and highlighted. And we carry on our discussions in fiqh al-mu'amalat, inshallah. With that, thank you very much. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.